I'm Catherine Kate Harrington, 29 years old, and to most people, I'm just a compliance officer working in a corporate world of gray suits and better-than-average pay. My father passed away when I was young, and after his death, my mom remarried David Johnson, a man who slowly replaced everything I knew. He made his daughter, Isla, the center of attention, while I was left standing in the shadows, never quite good enough in his eyes. They all adored her, Isla, the pretty one, the successful one, the one who didn't mind playing the game. Meanwhile, I've spent my life feeling like the black sheep, the invisible one, the one who can never live up to their expectations. But even I never saw what was coming that Christmas Eve, the night everything changed. You see, my life wasn't ruined by one bad decision. It was destroyed by a single push, literally and figuratively. And I'm about to make David regret it. The evening was colder than I expected for Christmas Eve, but that didn't stop everyone from packing into my grandmother's house like it was the most important night of the year. The dim lights of the tree cast a soft glow on the room, but I couldn't shake the suffocating tension. It was the same every year, an endless loop of forced smiles and meaningless conversations. My mom was busy with her own world, lost in a trance of polite chatter with David and Isla. She was wrapped up in her latest brand new outfit, her designer bags like trophies in her hands. David had always hated me, or maybe it was just easier for him to make me invisible. Either way, it didn't matter. Tonight, I was going to watch the show. "Simona, sweetheart, could you pass me the cranberry sauce?" my grandmother said in her usual fragile voice. I was sitting at the end of the long table, the seat that had been mine for years, where my father had always sat before he died. His absence had never felt so sharp as it did in this room, filled with people who had forgotten him, or worse, replaced him. "Here you go, Grandma," I said, passing the dish, my eyes still on David. He was playing the part of the family patriarch too well. The glass of wine in his hand was nearly empty, and he kept glancing at Isla like she was the center of the universe. I watched as David gave Isla that smile, the kind that made my stomach churn, the one that said everything I'd ever wanted to hear, but never would. As my eyes drifted over to her, I couldn't help but notice how her perfect lips twitched into a smug grin. I looked away quickly, but the damage had already been done. I could feel the anger simmering beneath my skin. I wasn't prepared for what happened next. "Simona, you're in the way," David snapped, his voice cutting through the hum of family conversation. I looked up, confused. "This seat belongs to my real daughter. Get out." It was a quiet declaration, but loud enough for everyone to hear. The room fell deathly silent, the air thick with disbelief. My chest tightened, my hands frozen on the edge of my plate. I didn't move. I couldn't. "I'm sorry, what?" I finally managed, my voice barely above a whisper. David's eyes narrowed, a calculated smile curling at the corners of his mouth. "You heard me. Isla deserves this spot." Before I could react, he grabbed my chair and yanked it from under me, throwing me off balance. My hips slammed against the cold hardwood floor, and the cranberry sauce shot across the table, splattering my grandmother's vintage dress. The room stood still, and in that moment I knew. They all just watched. The silence was unbearable, and I could hear my grandmother gasp, but not a single person moved. My mother's face was frozen. No anger, no sympathy, just a vacant look that betrayed everything I had feared. David muttered something under his breath about how I should be grateful I was even invited. I scrambled to my feet, humiliated, my dress ripped. As I stood there, holding back the tears, something caught my eye. His business phone, unlocked, lying casually on the kitchen counter. A message glaring at me like a red light. Transfer complete. No turning back. My blood ran cold. I rushed out of the room, ignoring the hushed whispers behind me. As soon as I was alone in the driveway, I fumbled for my keys and slid into my car, slamming the door shut. My hands trembled as I pulled out the old laptop my father had left me, hidden safely in my trunk just in case. I turned it on, hoping to find answers. What I found was worse than I could have imagined. David had been playing a game with my mother, with the family, and with everything my father had built. The pieces were falling into place, but it wasn't enough yet. He had no idea what I was about to do. The game was just beginning. He thought he pushed me out of the family. He just pushed me into the war. The car's engine roared to life, but it felt like the sound was swallowed by the dark night around me. My fingers were slick with sweat as I gripped the steering wheel, the cold biting through my coat. I could still hear David's voice echoing in my head, that smug, arrogant tone. This seat belongs to my real daughter. Get out. He thought he had one. He thought he had broken me. But the truth is, I had already made up my mind. I wasn't going down without a fight. The drive to my apartment was a blur, the streets flashing past like memories I didn't want to relive. By the time I parked, I was shaking, not from the cold, but from the weight of what I was about to do. I grabbed the old laptop, the one I'd kept hidden in my trunk since the day my father died. I knew it was the last thing David ever wanted me to find. It had been years since I last opened it. I didn't even want to know what kind of skeletons it might hold. But now I had no choice. I sat down at my desk, the laptop's familiar hum filling the silence of my small apartment. As I typed in my birthday for the password, because my father had never been good with them, it opened. The first file was labeled for Kate only. A lump formed in my throat. My father had never hidden things from me. Not like this. What had he known that I didn't? I clicked it open. Inside was a video. My father, sitting in his study, looking frail but sharp as ever. He looked straight into the camera, his voice steady. Simona, if you're watching this, it means that David has shown his true colors. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you, but I've left you the tools to protect yourself. My stomach twisted. There was more. He continued. I've left everything you need in 3 places. The laptop, a safety deposit box at First National, and with my attorney in Denver. They will guide you when the time is right. David is not who he seems. The video ended. I stared at the screen, trying to process his words. My father had suspected David long before I did. But what did that mean for me? What had David been doing all these years? I clicked through to the next file. Asset transfers, David. It was labeled. It opened with spreadsheets, numbers, names, dates, none of them making sense. My heart pounded as I scanned them. Property titles, bank transfers. These weren't just normal transactions. They were fraud. It was all there in black and white. I almost didn't want to believe it, but I knew what I was seeing. David had been siphoning money from my father's company, moving assets, creating shell companies, covering up his tracks. He had planned it all. I clicked through more files, each one more damning than the last. Loans, mortgages, even a falsified will. It was too much. I closed the laptop and rubbed my eyes. What the hell am I supposed to do with this? I muttered aloud. The silence of my apartment felt oppressive. The weight of the truth settled over me like a heavy fog. Suddenly, my phone buzzed on the desk. It was a message from Jessica, my cousin. David's lawyer is going after you. What the hell happened tonight? I saw the video. I stared at the screen for a moment, my mind racing. David was moving fast. Too fast. I dialed Jessica's number. Hey, what's going on? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. You really have no idea, do you? Her voice was tight, like she knew something I didn't. What are you talking about? David. He's making his move. They're transferring the company to him, right now. And it's happening fast. It's not just about the house, Kate. He's taking everything. You need to act now. I felt my chest tighten. What do you mean? I mean, she said, her voice dropping low. David's been getting financial backing from some unsavory people. And it's not just about money anymore. It's about power. You need to stop him before he gets everything. My stomach churned. What do you know, Jessica? But she was already gone. The line went dead. I stood up, pacing. My head was spinning. The files, Jessica's warning, it was all starting to feel like I was caught in something bigger than I ever imagined. The deeper I dug, the more dangerous it became. I needed to do something. Fast. I grabbed my coat and headed for the door, my mind racing. I had to get to Denver. There was no time to waste. The attorney my father had trusted, Mitchell Reeves, was the only one who could help me sort through the mess David had left behind. But there was something else. A small detail I'd almost missed in the rush of everything. The final document. The one labeled for my daughter. I pulled the folder open and stared at the contents. It was a will. But not just any will. My heart skipped a beat as I read the final line. The business and assets are to remain in trust for my daughter until she reaches the age of 30, or if evidence of fraud is uncovered prior. I could feel the blood drain from my face. I wasn't just fighting for money. I was fighting for the very soul of my father's legacy. And David had no idea what was coming. The truth isn't hidden in the lies. It's hidden in the things they never told you. The sun had barely risen, but I was already awake, sitting in front of the same laptop that had turned my life upside down. The weight of what I had found kept pressing against me, each new discovery making the air in the room feel thicker. I couldn't breathe, not from fear, but from the realization that everything I thought I knew about my family, about David, about my mother, was a lie. A carefully constructed web, too well hidden for too long. Now the pieces were scattered across my desk, and I had no idea how to put them together. I had barely touched the coffee in front of me. My phone buzzed, its sudden jarring sound pulling me back to reality. It was a message from Jessica. You've been keeping quiet about everything, but this isn't just a family matter anymore. I have someone on the inside. David's plan is bigger than we thought. It's time to act. Inside, the words made my blood run cold. It wasn't just David anymore. Someone else had been helping him, and I was damn sure it wasn't just business partners. I had to get to the bottom of this, but where could I even start? I grabbed my jacket and hurried out the door, knowing that every minute I wasted gave David more time to cover his tracks. I drove through the empty streets of Seattle, the cold air biting at my skin as I fought to keep my thoughts focused. My phone buzzed again. Catherine, you're not answering your texts. David's lawyer is going public. They're pushing hard for the company, came the voice of Adrian, a lawyer I trusted, though I wasn't sure I could trust him now. I'm on my way, I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. I hung up and pushed the accelerator harder, the speedometer climbing as I rushed through the city. I couldn't let David win. Not after everything he'd done. But how far was I willing to go? I reached the law firm's glass and steel building in downtown Seattle just before the clock struck 10. I didn't wait for the elevator. I headed straight to the private conference room where Adrian had arranged to meet me. The sleek, modern office was quiet, but the silence felt like it was closing in on me. Adrian stood at the head of the table, staring down at a stack of papers. He looked up when I entered, his expression tight. Kate, I didn't want to pull you into this, he said, his voice low. But now, I think you need to know. Know what? I demanded, stepping closer, my mind racing. He handed me a file, its edges worn from being handled too much. I opened it slowly. It was a set of financial documents, numbers that seemed meaningless at first, but the more I looked, the clearer it became. These were not just business documents. They were a trail that led straight to a series of shady offshore accounts. My heart pounded as I realized what this meant. David's been laundering money. For years, Adrian said, his voice almost a whisper. The company's been a front for a much larger operation. He's connected to people in places I can't even mention. What people? My voice was trembling now. This was worse than I imagined. This wasn't just corporate fraud. It was something bigger. Adrian looked at me, his gaze hard. There are criminal networks involved. This isn't just about money anymore. He's in deep with people who can make your life a living hell. I felt the walls of the room closing in. My thoughts raced. How deep had David sunk? How many lives had he destroyed for his gain? And why had he targeted my family so relentlessly? Suddenly, the door to the conference room opened, and a man stepped inside. His suit was pristine, his face unreadable. He was tall, with sharp features, and I knew immediately he was one of David's men. I recognized him from the pictures in the files. I think it's time we took this conversation somewhere more private, the man said, his voice dripping with cold malice. Adrian stood up, but I could see the hesitation in his eyes. Kate, I don't think you realize just how dangerous this situation has become. You need to leave. But it was too late. The man was already stepping closer to me, blocking the exit. I took a step back, my heart hammering in my chest. You think I'm afraid of you? I snapped, my voice steadier than I felt. I don't think you understand, the man said, but you will soon enough. Before I could react, he pulled something from his jacket, an envelope. This is for your eyes only. It's a warning, he said, placing it on the table with an almost mocking smile. My pulse quickened. A warning. From David, no doubt. I opened it without hesitation. Inside was a single sentence, written in dark, bold letters. Stop now, or your family won't be the only one who suffers. The room felt colder, darker. I could feel the walls closing in, the weight of David's threat pressing on me. This is bigger than you think, Adrian said, his voice strained. You need to back off. Now. I stared at the letter, the words blurring in my vision. This wasn't just a fight for money or power anymore. It was a fight for my life. For the truth. Tell David I'm not backing down, I said, my voice sharp. The man's smile faltered, just for a moment. I hope you know what you're doing, he said, then turned and left, closing the door behind him. I stood there, frozen, the words of the letter echoing in my head. The stakes had just gotten much higher. If I wanted to stop David, I was going to have to fight him with everything I had. But was I ready for what was coming? They want me dead, and I'm just beginning to understand why. I stood frozen, the letter from David's goons still in my hand. Stop now, or your family won't be the only one who suffers. The words burned through my skin, heavier than any threat I'd ever heard. This wasn't just a power play. This was personal. My heart pounded as I shoved the letter into my jacket pocket, feeling the weight of it pressing against me, the threat lingering in every inch of my body. I needed to act. I had no choice now. I had to find a way to stop him before it was too late. Adrian's words echoed in my head. You need to get out of this. It's too dangerous. You're in over your head. But I wasn't listening anymore. Not to Adrian, not to anyone. David had crossed a line when he humiliated me in front of my family. That was just the beginning. If he thought I would back down, he was wrong. I had everything I needed now, proof, leverage, and a plan. I grabbed my keys and stormed out of the office. It was time to pay Mitchell Reeves a visit, the family lawyer my father had trusted with everything. I didn't trust anyone else at this point, especially not Adrian. He was too close to the fire. I arrived at Mitchell's office just as the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows over the downtown skyline. The building was old, but elegant, much like Mitchell himself. His office, a space cluttered with legal books and dusty files, smelled like aged paper and cologne. It felt like the kind of place where secrets were stored, secrets that could burn you alive. I knocked once, then opened the door. Mitchell looked up from behind his desk, his face lighting up when he saw me, but his smile faltered when he saw the expression on my face. Kate, he said, his voice low. What's going on? I didn't sit down. I just walked straight to the desk and slammed the file onto it. This, I said, pointing at the stack of documents. This is why everything has been falling apart. David's been stealing from my father's company. He's been laundering money, moving assets around. And I'm next. Mitchell's face went pale as he scanned the pages. He didn't say anything for a long time. His silence was more than enough to confirm my worst fears. Finally, he spoke, but his voice was steady, like he had already made up his mind. Kate, this is bad. You're not wrong. But you're also not the first person to try and take down David. You need to understand, these kind of people, he's not alone. If you're going after him, you're going after everyone he's working with. I don't care, I snapped, suddenly desperate. I don't care who he's working with. I'm done being pushed around. Mitchell stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. You don't get it. There's more at stake here than you realize. You can't just run into this head first. This isn't just about family, Kate. This is bigger than that. Then help me, I demanded, my voice rising. Help me stop him. He rubbed his face, as if trying to gather his thoughts. You need to take a step back. This isn't something you can fix on your own. He's not just using the company. He's using your family, your mother, as a shield. And you're walking right into it. I don't care about my mother anymore, I said through clenched teeth. She's gone, Mitchell. She's under his control. You have no idea what it's like to watch your own mother turn a blind eye to the man who's destroying everything she's supposed to care about. She's not just blind to him. She's complicit. She's been complicit the whole time. Mitchell sighed and sat back down. It's not that simple, Kate. You think you're the only one who's noticed what he's doing? You think your mother hasn't? She's just as trapped as you are. And if you push too hard, if you go public with this, everything will come crashing down. You're not just fighting David anymore. You're fighting the system he's built. I felt a knot form in my stomach. What do you mean by that? He didn't answer immediately. He just stared at me, like he was trying to decide whether I was ready for the truth. Finally, he spoke. The people David is connected to, they're not just businessmen. They're criminals, and they've got their hands in everything. Banks, real estate, politics. If you take down David, you're taking down an empire. And they won't stop until you're buried under it. My pulse quickened. I don't care. He's going down. I'll expose everything. Mitchell leaned forward, lowering his voice. If you expose him, you expose yourself too. He'll come after you, Kate. And he won't stop. You'll lose everything. You'll be nothing. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stepped back, feeling the weight of his words crash over me. My breath was shallow as I tried to process it all. You think I'm afraid of that? I finally managed to say, I've already lost everything. My father's dead. My family's gone. And if I let David destroy what's left, then I've lost myself too. Mitchell looked at me with something resembling pity in his eyes, but he didn't say anything. He didn't have to. I knew what he was thinking. He thought I was out of my mind. Maybe I was, but it didn't matter anymore. I turned to leave, but Mitchell called out, his voice soft but heavy with warning. You'll be making a mistake, Kate. A big one. I paused at the door, but didn't turn around. I've made worse mistakes. This one I can fix. As I stepped into the hallway, the walls felt like they were closing in on me. The sound of my footsteps echoed down the empty corridor. I had no idea what I was really getting into, but I knew one thing for sure. There was no turning back now. David had started this war, and I was going to finish it. They want me dead, and I'm just beginning to understand why. The morning after Mitchell's warning, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I didn't know if it was the weight of the threat David had left or the tightening grip of the game I was now a part of, but everything felt off. Every footstep sounded too loud, every shadow too deep. I drove through Seattle's downtown streets like a woman possessed, barely aware of where I was going, until I pulled up to a nondescript office building that I had passed hundreds of times, but never noticed. The cold concrete walls reflected the gray, overcast sky, matching my mood perfectly. The address on the slip of paper in my hand read simply, Sasha Quinn, private investigator. If David was the head of a criminal empire, Sasha was the type of person who could connect the dots. I needed someone like her. Someone who could dig into the dirt David thought he had buried. I hesitated before pushing through the door. The dimly lit interior of the office had the scent of old coffee and musty paper. It looked like a place that hadn't seen daylight in years. A woman sat behind the desk, her eyes sharp behind a pair of thin-rimmed glasses. She had the look of someone who wasn't easily impressed. And I needed that. "You the one looking for dirt?" Sasha's voice was low, deliberate. She didn't wait for me to answer, just nodded toward the seat across from her. "Sit down." I didn't sit immediately. Instead, I placed the stack of files I had brought on the table between us. Sasha's eyes flicked over them, but didn't immediately react. She knew what this was about. "I've got a problem," I said. "His name is David Johnson. He's been running an operation under the guise of a family business. But it's much more than that. I need you to dig deeper." She picked up the file labeled Asset Transfers, David, flipping through it quickly. Her fingers paused over a page filled with bank account numbers, foreign transactions, names I didn't recognize. "The problem with these kinds of files," Sasha said slowly, "is that people like David know how to cover their tracks. You've got a lot of breadcrumbs here, but no actual smoking gun." "And you think you can find it?" I asked, leaning in, my voice barely a whisper. Her lips curled into a thin smile. "You've got the basics. I'll go deeper. But if this goes as far as I think it does, you're walking into a war you're not prepared for." I clenched my jaw. "I'm prepared for anything." She didn't say anything for a moment, then set the file down and looked at me. Her eyes softened, just enough to show that she understood what I was up against. "One thing you should know, Kate," she said, her tone serious now. "If you go after him, you're not just attacking David. You're attacking everyone he's been working with for years. And you'll need more than just a lawyer to keep yourself safe." I stared at her, the weight of her words sinking in, but it didn't matter anymore. I was already in too deep. I left Sasha's office with a new sense of purpose. The game had changed. It wasn't just about family anymore. It was about survival. The stakes had been raised, and I had no intention of losing. I got back to my apartment and locked the door behind me, sinking into the chair. The files were still scattered across the table, but now they felt more like a curse than a resource. David's empire wasn't just financial, it was political, too. He had connections that reached far beyond the family business. It was all in the way he'd hidden the true nature of his operations. Shell companies, phony transactions, black market deals that were all tied to real estate, offshore accounts, and, most terrifying of all, political favors. I opened the laptop again, the cold glow of the screen flickering. A single email sat in my inbox, its subject line glaring at me, David's final move. It was from a name I didn't recognize. My fingers hovered over the keyboard before I opened it, feeling the familiar rush of anxiety creep up my spine. It was a short message. "I know what you're doing. You need to stop. This isn't just about money. He's not just a businessman. You're in too deep. Get out while you still can." My mind raced. The email had come from a burner account. Whoever sent this knew things I hadn't figured out yet. I slammed the laptop shut, my breath coming faster. "Get out while you still can." The words haunted me. It was the same message I'd gotten before, only now it was more real. I was being watched. I wasn't just up against David. I was up against an entire system, and if I didn't play my cards right, I would be swallowed whole. I grabbed my coat and stepped outside, not knowing where to go, but feeling the weight of every step I took. I couldn't go back. There was no out anymore. The wind was sharp against my face, but I didn't care. I was already on a path that I couldn't turn away from. I needed more answers, and I wasn't about to let anyone stand in my way. Not David, not his hired goons, not even the law. The city felt like it was closing in around me. The cold was cutting through my jacket, but I didn't feel it. All I could think about was how far David had gone to hide his crimes, and how much I needed to dig if I was going to stop him. I reached the corner, and before I could take another step, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Catherine Harrington, The voice on the other end said, "You've been digging where you shouldn't, and now I think it's time for you to stop." It was David. "They want me dead, and I'm just beginning to understand why." The night air was thick with tension as I walked toward the courthouse, my footsteps echoing through the empty streets of downtown Seattle. I felt a strange calm settle over me, as if everything that had led up to this moment, the fear, the threats, the countless lies, had finally brought me to the one place where everything would change. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I didn't check it. The text from Jessica, the call from Sasha, they didn't matter now. This was it. Inside the courtroom, the air was thick with anticipation. David's team of lawyers were already seated at their table, confident, smug. They had no idea what was coming. No idea that their carefully constructed world of lies was about to fall apart. I had spent days preparing for this moment, gathering the evidence, lining up the witnesses, and most importantly, finding the truth buried beneath layers of deceit. Today, the truth would come to light. I sat at my table, the legal papers in front of me, feeling like the only thing keeping me tethered to this reality. My heart beat in my throat as I glanced over at my mother, sitting in the row behind me. Her eyes were distant, almost cold. She hadn't spoken to me since the night of the dinner, when everything had come crashing down. I could see the weight of guilt in her face, but she wouldn't speak the words I needed to hear. As the judge entered and the proceedings began, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Every word, every piece of evidence, every testimony felt like it was peeling back the layers of David's empire. Piece by piece, the truth was unraveling, and with it, the illusion of his power. "Your Honor," David's lawyer, Richard Steinberg, began, his voice smooth as silk. "My client has done nothing but support this family. The allegations presented here today are nothing more than a series of fabrications meant to destroy his reputation." The audience shifted in their seats, the tension palpable. I wasn't sure if I was imagining it, but it felt like the walls were closing in. My lawyer stood and made his case, presenting the bank records, the fraudulent transactions, the hidden properties, and most importantly, the will that David had thought he had destroyed. The one my father had left for me. I had it all, and there was no denying it anymore. David's expression never changed, though. His face was a mask of defiance, but I could see the cracks starting to show. His lawyers fumbled, attempting to discredit the evidence, but every attempt only made their case weaker. The crowd murmured, and I felt the momentum shift. This wasn't just a legal battle anymore. This was my fight. The fight for my father's legacy. For justice. Then, the moment I had been waiting for arrived. My grandmother, who had been sitting quietly behind me, stood up, her voice trembling but strong. She made her way to the stand, the weight of the years behind her giving her strength. "David," she said, her voice echoing through the courtroom, "I watched you pretend to be someone you're not. I watched you destroy everything my son built, and I stayed silent, thinking I could protect my family. But I see now that silence is complicity. My silence made me part of your lies." The room was dead silent. Even David couldn't hide the shock that flashed across his face. "I'm here today to make it right," my grandmother continued, looking directly at him. "Your greed is the reason this family is broken. You took from us all, and it ends now." Her words hit like a bomb, and for the first time I saw fear in David's eyes. Not the cold, calculating fear of someone trying to maintain control, but the fear of someone who knew their time had come. I looked at my mother, hoping to see a flicker of something, anything, that showed she understood what was happening. But her eyes were empty. She had made her choice long ago. David's defense fell apart from that moment forward. Witnesses came forward, people who had been afraid to speak out until now. The truth about David's shady deals, the stolen money, the lies about his business ventures, they all came to light. But there was one final, unexpected twist waiting for us all. As the courtroom broke into a flurry of activity, I received a phone call. It was from Sasha, the investigator. Her voice was calm but urgent. Kate, I've been following the money trail. It leads back to something bigger than David. You need to know, the people he's been working with are more than just criminals. They have connections that go all the way up. The investigation isn't over yet. I could hear her words, but they felt distant, almost irrelevant now. David had been exposed. His empire was crumbling in front of my eyes. I didn't need to know about the other players anymore. The truth was out, and for the first time in years I felt free. David was arrested that afternoon, his smugness completely gone. His lawyers tried to save face, but it was too late. The case against him was airtight. The justice system would take care of the rest. The days that followed felt surreal. The family business was returned to me as my father had intended. I made decisions that would ensure its future, ensuring that David's shadow would never again tarnish it. My mother, though, was not a part of that future. She had been a victim of David's manipulation. Yes, but in the end, she had chosen silence over truth. She couldn't face me. She couldn't face what she had done. I stood in my father's office, looking out over the city. The weight of everything I had fought for settled over me. But there was something else now. A sense of relief. I had lost a lot, more than I cared to admit. But I had regained something, too. My father's legacy, the truth, and my dignity. Justice isn't about revenge. It's about balance. It's about restoring what's been broken, even when it seems impossible. In the end, truth always has a way of finding its way to the surface. David thought he could push me down. What he didn't know was that sometimes the ones we push down are the ones who rise the highest. They want me dead, and I'm just beginning to understand why. But in the end, I'm still here, and I always will be.